In 1957, at Camp Alpine Lake in Colorado, a girl named Hope steps into the cold and calls a number from a payphone. She explains to the person on the other end that she saw this number carved into the ice in her strange dreams. When she asks who she's talking to, the reply dissolves into static. The noise climbs into a piercing whine, and she slams the receiver down. Jump to Denver, 1982. Finny is pummeling a new kid in the schoolyard while the boy begs him to stop. He only backs off when his younger sister, Gwen, shouts his name. Later, Gwen demands to know what happened. Finny shrugs it off and says the other kid started it. Ever since Finny survived and defeated a serial kidnapper known as the Grabber 4 years earlier, he's been treated like some kind of legend. They're soon approached by Ernie, whose brother was one of the Grabber's victims. Ernie awkwardly asks Gwen to go to a concert, and she says yes. That night, Finny can't sleep. He steps outside to smoke, and his mind replays the night he killed the Grabber. He even imagines the masked man standing in the yard. Gwen comes out to check on him, but Finny refuses to talk and sends her back in. Meanwhile, at Camp Alpine Lake, a boy named Felix arrives with a busload of excited kids. What should be a fun retreat turns into a nightmare when Felix is chased through the snowy forest by the Grabber. Felix trips, and the killer catches him and murders him. Later, Felix's body is dumped into a frozen lake. Before he disappears beneath the ice, he scratches the letter W into its surface. Gwen jolts awake. It was another dream. A phone rings. She opens the front door and briefly thinks she sees something strange across the street before Finny calls her back inside, saying she was sleepwalking again. She tries to tell him about the nightmare, but he brushes it off and sends her to bed. The next day, Gwen pores over books on the supernatural in the school library. Some girls mock her and call her a witch. Ernie arrives with concert tickets and casually tells her he thinks it's cool she's into spooky stuff. He shows her tarot cards his grandmother sells. He also admits he knows about her visions, helping the police find the Grabber's victims. Gwen is uncomfortable with the subject, but Ernie reassures her. He likes weird. After school, Finny stops by a store and hears a payphone ringing. He picks it up, mutters, "Sorry, I can't help you," and hangs up. The camera reveals the phone is out of order. Back at Camp Alpine Lake, another boy, Kel, joins the camp activities and makes friends. One night, the Grabber chases him through the trees, catches him, and kills him. Parts of Kel's body are burned, the rest dumped into the lake. His spirit carves the letter B next to Felix's W on the ice. Gwen wakes to the sound of a ringing phone again. She steps outside and sees Kel's body lie in the yard. Panicked and confused, she jumps on her bike and rides to the Grabber's old house. She crawls in through a tiny basement window into the same cellar where Finny was once held. The black rotary phone is still on the wall. When she answers, she hears Hope's voice from decades ago, the same call from 1957. Gwen realizes that Hope once had the same dream she has now, except the boys in Hope's visions carved numbers instead of letters. Gwen tries to ask more, but the line breaks up into static and dies. She turns around and sees the ghost of the Grabber's brother, Max, standing there. He warns her she shouldn't be in the cellar. The trapdoor opens above, and the phone starts ringing again. Footsteps descend, but it's only Finny, who came looking for her. Gwen tells him she was talking to a younger version of their mother, Hope. Finny dismisses it as just another nightmare and spits on the floor before dragging her out. The next day, Gwen finds a brochure for Camp Alpine Lake and suggests they sign up as counselors to investigate. Finny refuses. Their father, Terrence, overhears and mentions that Hope once worked at that camp. It closed down in 1958, he says, and he doesn't trust those Christian camps. Later, Gwen convinces Ernie to go up with her. Finny doesn't like Ernie and decides to come along to look out for his sister. They drive into mountain for hours until the road disappears in a wall of white. Wrecked cars sit in snowdrifts along the shoulder. With visibility gone, Finny tells Ernie to stop. Finny will run ahead on foot to follow the road, and the car should crawl behind him. After a tense stretch, They're found by a counselor named Mustang, who guides them to camp with a flashlight. At the camp, they meet Mustang's uncle, Armando, the camp manager. He explains that roads won't be plowed until the storm clears, so no kids are coming tomorrow. Only staff is on site. As they walk toward the cabins, Finny notices an old payphone outside. Gwen is sent to the girls' dorm. Finny and Ernie go to boys' side. Both dorms are empty. No campers, just staff. Gwen falls asleep quickly and dreams again. She sees a boy named Spike, who plays in the camp band and is murdered as well. His ghost carves the letter H into the ice beside W and B. Then his face seems to tear apart in the dream, and Gwen wakes with a cry. She hears scraping sounds under the neighboring bed. Outside, Finny steps out to smoke and hears the payphone ringing again. When he walks toward it, the ringing stops. When he walks away, the ringing starts up. He finally reaches the booth and answers with his usual, "I can't help you," then hangs up. The phone rings again more aggressively. As he turns to leave, the sound becomes almost unbearable. He picks up and this time hears a grabber's voice. "Hello, Finny." Finny slams it down, but the booth door swings shut and locks. No matter how hard he kicks, it won't open. The phone rings again. He kicks the phone. The receiver falls, and the grabber's voice calmly says, "Hell isn't fire, it's ice, because nothing burns like cold." In the dorm, Gwen forces herself to check under the bed and sees Felix's ghost. She stumbles back and brushes into Kel's ghost, whose touch burns her arm. Terrified, she backs away as the boys draw closer. Spike appears at the window and tries to open it. Another shadow appears behind him, smashes a glass, and Spike's face is brutally slashed in front of her. Gwen screams. At that exact moment, the phone booth door pops open. Finny bolts out and runs to Gwen's cabin. He finds her screaming and wakes her. She breaks down, sobbing that she's losing her mind. He bandages the burn on her arm and tries to calm her. Gwen refuses to sleep alone and climbs into Ernie's bed in the boys' dorm. She asks Jesus to keep the nightmares away and admits to Ernie she was raised in a deeply religious home. Ernie says he was too. Gwen explains that their mother also had powerful dreams and it eventually broke her sanity. Gwen's terrified the same thing will happen. Ernie reassures her. They nearly kiss before Finny barges in and orders them to sleep. In the morning, Finny is angry that Gwen told Ernie everything. Gwen shows him the burn on her arm as proof that these aren't just dreams. At breakfast, Armando scolds her for sleeping in the boys' dorm and asks what they're really doing here. He doesn't buy the counselor excuse. Gwen shows him Hope's old photo, and Armando's expression softens. He remembers Hope as a counselor at the camp and is devastated to hear she died by suicide 7 years earlier. He tells them to call home from the office phone to assure their families they're safe. When Finny mentions the payphone working outside, Armando frowns and says it hasn't worked in over 10 years. After he leaves, Finny admits the payphone has rung twice and that he heard the grabber's voice. As if on cue, the outside line starts ringing again. Finny runs to the booth and answers. A boy's voice crackles through the static. It's freezing, and we're not supposed to be here. The 3 ghost boys gather around the booth, pounding on the glass while the unseen caller begs for help. They can't remember details, just being cold and trapped. Finny, unable to see them, asks for more information, but gets almost nothing. The pounding grows louder, and the ghosts only vanish when he hangs up. Back home, Terrence gets a call from Gwen, who says they're okay. He still worries about the blizzard and calls a friend to borrow a snowplow. At camp, Gwen and Ernie visit the office and ask staffers Kenneth and Barbara if there are any books about camp history. Kenneth kindly says they just have brochures. Barbara, stiff and judgmental, scolds Gwen for her language and for sleeping in the boys' dorm. When Gwen asks about the 3 boys who died years ago, Barbara snaps that good Christian folks don't dwell on such things. An argument erupts. Kenneth ushers the kids out. That night, Gwen dreams of Hope again, back in the 1950s, answering the pay phone and seeing visions of the boys. Felix's ghost stands at the forest's edge. Gwen follows, but he vanishes as red feathers fall from the sky. Felix's jacket appears on the ground, with Spike watching nearby. An axe slams into a tree, and blood seeps from the wood. A noise makes Gwen wake. She sees the dorm door swing shut on its own, and, for an instant, her mother's face staring back at her. Gwen steps into the cold and sees Felix, so she follows him. At the same time, Finny wakes up the phone ringing again. He shakes Ernie awake and tells him to stay with Gwen while he answers it. Gwen spots both boys heading different directions, but chooses to keep following Felix. Finny picks up the phone and hears the grabber again, though he doesn't see his ghost near the booth. The grabber says he's come back to ruin everything Finny loves, because Finny made him kill his own brother. Ernie reaches the girls' dorm and finds it empty, then sprints off to alert the staff. Felix leads Gwen to the mess hall. She follows a strange light into the kitchen, where the ovens yaw open and flames lick inside. Pots and pans crash down, drawing the adults toward the noise. The grabber's ghost emerges from the shadows and swings an axe at Gwen. She dodges and grabs whatever she can to defend herself. He lashes a belt around her legs to knock her down, then lunges again. When she blocks the blow, he wraps his hands around her throat and starts choking her. The adults and Ernie burst into the kitchen and see Gwen clawing at her neck, gasping for air, but they can't see the attacker. Suddenly, her body lifts and slams into the wall. Finny, hearing Barbara scream from outside, races in. Gwen is hurled onto a table, spun in the air, then dragged toward the open ovens. Ernie grabs her legs and fights to pull her back. As the adults rush over, utensils and cookware fly off the shelves and batter them, as if thrown by invisible hands. Mustang ducks the projectiles and helps Ernie haul Gwen away. At that moment, Finny enters, and the grabber melts back into shadows. Once Gwen wakes, everyone gathers in the chapel. She explains her dreams and the dead boys asking for help. Armando recognizes their descriptions. He says he never stopped wondering what happened to them. He shows a group photo from the camps last season. Hope is among the counselors, and Finny recognizes the grabber standing in the back row. Armando explains a man was a maintenance worker nicknamed Wild Bill Hickok because he wore a belt like an Old West gunfighter. Gwen realizes those initials match the letters carved into the ice, and concludes this camp is where the grabber first began killing. Armando says strange things started happening here around 4 years ago. Finny points out that's when he killed the grabber in town. Maybe that freed the killer's spirit to return to his original hunting ground. Gwen suggests the grabber's power comes from the fear of the boys whose bodies were never found. To stop him, they need to recover the remains and set their spirits free. The police never dredged the lake because it was frozen when the boys disappeared. Armando remembers Wild Bill had ice fishing gear and could have cut holes into the ice unnoticed. They agree to check the lake at first light. Later, Armando returns to his office to find the boys' photos and hears a faint noise. Outside, a snowman stands where there wasn't one before. He assumes Mustang made it. His radio suddenly crackles with static, then the grabber's voice comes through. "You made me kill my brother." Armando answers that he can't hold on to the boys forever. The power goes out. He grabs a flashlight and turns back to the window to see a crude version of the grabber's mask, shaped from blood and snow, smeared onto the glass. The voice snarls, "I want to hurt you." Armando responds that they'll get the boys back, calling the voice bill. The grabber roars that it's not his name, pounds the window, and vanishes. Morning. The whole group spreads out across the frozen lake, drilling and probing the ice. They find nothing. That night, they plan shifts. Finny and Ernie will watch Gwen while she sleeps. Gwen dreams of a paper boy named Billy, peddling his route in town. The younger grabber pulls up in his black van, snatches Billy, and drives off, his first victim back home. Hope dreams his memory as well and recognizes Wild Bill from camp. In the real world, Gwen begins sleepwalking. Ernie gently steers her back to bed. The dream continues. Gwen watches Hope climb out of bed and follows her mother through the snowy streets to the grabber's house. Hope peers into the cellar and sees a child prisoner. She runs to the phone to call the police, but the young grabber jumps her, drags her to the van. The spirit of the older grabber appears and forces Gwen into the van too. During the ride, Ghost Grabber tells Gwen he's doing her a favor. He wants her to understand the truth before everything ends. They pull up at Gwen's family home. Inside the garage, Gwen sees Hope's body hanging. Hope did not kill herself. The grabber murdered her and staged the scene. Gwen sobs as Terrence discovers his wife and collapses in grief. The grabber raises his axe. Gwen runs through the house and up the stairs, only to find herself in the basement of his old place. The black phone rings. Felix's voice tells her to hide. She darts in the bathroom and discovers a hole behind the tub that leads to a door. She pounds on it, but it won't open. The grabber slashes her arm with the axe. Blood appears on her arm in the real world, too. Ernie shouts for help, but nobody can wake her. In the dream, Gwen finally forces the door open and emerges near Felix, who slams it behind her as she runs to the lake. Across the ice, she hears distant shouts, her friends calling her name from reality. On the actual lake, Armando is still searching. He finally spots Felix's body lodged under the ice and starts chipping at it. In the dream, a payphone appears beside Gwen. It rings. When she answers, the grabber hisses that he's defending himself from those trying to strip him of his power. On the real lake, the grabber's ghost appears behind Armando and smashes the ice. Armando plunges into the freezing water. As he claws to the edge, the grabber stomps on his hands to push him under. In the dorm, Gwen thrashes in bed, swinging her arms. In trying to fight the booth door in the dream, she actually punches Finny. In the nightmare, the grabber shatters the phone booth's glass and wraps the cord around Gwen's neck, hoisting and flinging her. Her body does the same in the dorm, spinning and slamming into walls. Blood streaks the floor. The boys rush to restrain her. Mustang dumps cold water on her face, but she doesn't wake. Everyone yells at her to fight back. In the dream, Gwen suddenly hears their voices through the handset. She focuses and the booth explodes outward, blasting the grabber away. "This is my dream," she tells him. "I have power here too." She headbutts him hard and wakes up. They sprint to the lake and pull Armando out before he drowns. He confirms he found Felix's body beneath the ice. They decide they'll return for the other two boys in the morning. Back at camp, Terrence arrives in a borrowed snowplow. Finny is ready to go home, but Gwen refuses. She wants to finish what they started. An argument breaks out. Gwen calls both her father and brother out for never dealing with their trauma, just running from it. She tells Terrence the truth about Hope's death, that she was murdered, not suicidal. It's enough to convince both men to stay. The next day, they spend hours searching the lake for Spike and Kel and come up empty. Gwen drifts into another dream. The grabber glides across the ice on skates. She tries to run and falls through a hole. Her real body becomes soaked as if plunged into water. The grabber swings his axe and strikes Kenneth, then drags him across the ice. In reality, Kenneth is knocked down and slid across as well. He slams into Barbara, sending her face first onto the ice. The grabber continues hacking at them in the dream world, and their bodies are battered in the real one. Under the ice, Gwen sees a cluster of barrels. She kicks them loose and discovers the last two boys remain sealed inside. Above, the grabber hacks around the hole, widening it. A rescue line tumbles into the water. The grabber leaps down, loops his belt around Finny's neck, and starts choking him. Terrence dives into the water to help Gwen haul the barrels up, while Finny struggles against the noose and manages to shove the grabber away. On the surface, Gwen begins praying out loud. Her words seem to loosen something. The boy's spirits rise from the ice and grab the grabber's ankle, tripping him. They block his path as he scrambles toward shore. Gwen swings the axe into his head and rips off his mask. He screams and flails, exposed. Finny appears behind him and slams his face into the ice again and again. Gwen chops his leg to free it from a skeletal hand gripping his ankle. Together, They hurl his body into the hole. The three boys push him down into the black water. At last, he's gone for good. Gwen wakes, gasping, and kisses Ernie. Later, back at camp, Armando calls the boys' families to tell them their children have finally been found and laid to rest. Gwen hears the pay phone ringing once more. She answers. On the other end is Hope's voice, proud and gentle, thanking her for saving the kids. Hope tells her that the dreams are not a curse and that she loves her children. Then the line goes quiet. Gwen shares a message with Finny, and at last, the siblings climb into the snowplow with their dad and leave the camp behind. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories like this.